So we're in chapter 5 now, and we're going over Congress. As we went over the Constitution, in Article 1 of the Constitution, it talks about all of the powers of Congress, or the legislative branch, which is the lawmaking branch. But I wanted to go over some of these little articles that were put in here too that really that had to do with Congress here. I like this on the Focus. This article here, and you can read it over, but basically it was the first printing of the Bible in America. So the Bible for 150 years was the base for religious devotion and education and government in the United States prior to this time, prior to the Revolutionary War even. And it had been shipped from England, but during the Revolutionary War, during the War for Independence, England cut off its supply of Bibles to America. So it was considered a great crisis because even during the war, they were without Bibles. So in 1777, right after the Declaration of Independence, Patrick Allison was the chaplain of Congress, and he petitioned for Bibles. And so he started the consideration to Congress, and he said how Bibles were so important. If we needed Bibles, everyone needed a Bible in the midst of the war. And so he wanted to import Bibles, which he did, importing 20,000 Bibles from Holland and Scotland to the United States. So in the midst of all this, he asked for Holland and Scotland to bring in Bibles as they brought in Bibles. He asked for 20,000 Bibles. Congress said, resolved, we need Bibles. So they had the committee to import Bibles. But in 1780, the need arose even more. So Robert Aiken, who also ran the Pennsylvania magazine, he saw the need of printing Bibles. So in 1781, that's a long time ago, 1781, he petitioned Congress, gave Congress gave the green light to print Bibles. So he was given by Congress the first approved congressional law that he could now print Bibles for the Revolution. And now they're one of the rarest books ever, are these Bibles that were printed in 1781, the Bible of the Revolution. So I love that little article on how Congress even got together because they wanted more Bibles in America. Okay, let's talk about the mace. Look at that picture there of the mace. It's a club that's shaped like this symbol here with the eagle on top of it. It's a symbol of authority, and it was for the legislative assemblies. In the Middle Ages, it actually was used as a weapon. And but now it was used to restore order, like that hammer, the hammer figure, we have for the judicial court. The court come and then the hammer. We have this called the mace instead. And so this was held up to restore order in any assembly. So the mace went as a representative to the House of Representatives, so it represented order. So the call to order, like a 46-inch, that's a pretty big thing, 46 inches long, that's huge. And at the top, of course, was the American eagle, and in the Speaker of the House's right hand would hold this figure, and the sergeant-at-arms would give it to, because the sergeant-at-arms is keeping everything in order, would give it to the Speaker, and the Speaker would remain as long as the House was in session. So, and then at one point it may be removed to a lower position, and this is when the House was resolved into committees, the committee of the whole. So basically it told whether the House was in session or the House was in committee. And when you raise it, the House was in session. When you lowered it, the House was in the committees. And so you could tell the difference where everybody was working, whether if it was raised, then everybody needs to get in session. If it was lowered, everybody's in committee, right? So this was crafted in 1841 by a silversmith named William Adams. So on here shows a picture. The mace was used by the House, was crafted in 1841. It was patterned after the original, which the British destroyed during the War of 1812. So even back before 1812, they had the mace. but it was destroyed because in 1812, what happened? The British burned down the Capitol building and took our mace, and now we had to have a new one. So they basically crafted in 1841. So basically, lowering and raising this for the order in the House of Representatives. So the mace has to do with the House of Representatives. Of course, we went over here the apportionment of the House seats by the state. We already went over all that, so I'm not going to go over that. So I wanted to go over. I went over some of these things already. Okay. All right. I don't know how I'm going to do this here because I'd have to turn it. So you're going to have to turn your, turn to see this, or basically just look in your book here because I can't turn it. But this is the Capitol building. I'm going to go visit the Capitol building. It's very unique here, as you can see here. You can see one side of the Capitol building. Here's the Capitol building here. You can turn it here, but here's the Capitol, the dome right there. And then you can see you're going to have the rotunda is in the middle. And then on one side you're going to have the Senate, and the other side the House of Representatives, which is House of Representatives is going to be much bigger because there's 434 some members, and then on to 435 I think members, and on to the Senate with 100 members only. So, and you can see where it even shows the coat closets and everything here. So let's go on and talk about the Capitol here a little bit. The Capitol. The National Capitol. Here we go. So the National Capitol here is representative of our constitutional government, basically, in putting forth our Congress, because the Capitol has to do with what? Making laws. It has to be the state of our Congress, the national legislator is in. And in this towering dome represents, in the top of the dome is this bronze statue. I don't know if you can see it there. I guess you can't, but barely see it. Bronze statue of freedom. And the freedom had to do with the ideals under God, the liberty under the law, and the peace through strength. These are under the freedom on top of the dome. The circular hall in the middle, you can see where the middle, underneath where the dome is, where the tower dome is called the rotunda. And you can go through there, and it's there's 180 feet ceiling. So 180 feet tall ceiling, and you'll see a fresco on the ceiling there of Italian Constantine Brumidi. And Brumidi basically put together the apotheosis of George Washington, which are 19 panels of scenes from American history. It's kind of like looking up to the Sistine Chapel or something, but only has to do with the apotheosis of George Washington. From Columbus to the Wright brothers, we have these 19 panels of history. I'm going to go in and see. I haven't seen them for a while, so I would like to go. I'm going to actually go visit the Capitol this week. So, and then also the statues. There's statues in the area of the rotunda, and there's statues of the presidents. It's kind of unique how they pick these presidents. But we have President Garfield, who was actually assassinated and was president for only a short time. But we have President Garfield. We have President Andrew Jackson, another that as for the 7th president of the United States, and Ulysses S. Grant after the Civil War. Those are kind of 3 unlikely presidents to have statues there. But we also have statues of President Thomas Jefferson, who wrote the Declaration of Independence, we know, and on to President Abraham Lincoln during the Civil War, assassinated, and also George Washington. So we have Washington, Lincoln, and Jefferson, but also we have Garfield, Jackson, and Grant. There's also 2 statesmen. I find it pretty unique that we have these 2 statesmen. One of them is Alexander Hamilton. We know that Alexander Hamilton actually, he was almost like a son to George Washington, but Alexander Hamilton had a great influence on the Federalist Papers in holding our government together in a time when things were crazy, and basically standing on the Constitution as he did, and James Madison, both of them, as they put together the papers. But Alexander Hamilton's statue there too. Hamilton probably would have been a president, but he he had some things going on in his family that weren't so good at that time, and and they looked at him differently. But anyway, Hamilton became as for a statesman, one of the top statesmen of the United States, Alexander Hamilton. We'll go look through American history. And then Edward Baker, another statesman at that time, statue. Two statesmen, one very famous, one not quite so famous, right? So the east portico, the eastern side of the Capitol, is the scene of the presidential inauguration every year. Happens on the east side of the Capitol building there, every 4 years, right? The west portico has the prayer room. Now you can look back at that picture I said before, and you can find out. I have it's lopsided in here, so look at your picture there, and you can see where that prayer room is. In 1954, it was this prayer room was set aside, a room for facilities for prayer and meditation, and it was non-denominational, and it was supervised by a chaplain of the House of Representatives. The prayer room was kind of this bluish color and had an altar with an open Bible there, 2 vases of flowers that are fresh every day, an American flag, stained glass window there of George Washington in prayer. So a great place for a congressman or a senator to go to pray. Not that it's used that often now. It should be. In fact, George Washington in prayer underneath, it says, "Preserve me, O God, for thee I do put my trust." And saying the motto, "This nation under God." So that's in the west portico. The Senate wing, on the Senate side, there's a side, on one side's the Senate, and the other side is going to be the House of Representatives. On the Senate wing, you'll see the Senate chambers, the reception rooms, the committee rooms, all of these things in the Senate. On the ground floor, there's a lot of dining rooms, a couple dining rooms and shops, and a ticket office and post office and a barber shop. That's all on the ground floor. The Senate chamber was put together in 1859, and this is elaborately decorated mahogany desks and chairs in a semicircle there. And there's a raised marble platform in the Senate. Who is the president of the Senate? Would be the vice president of the United States, right? And he would come forth and stand on that marble platform if needed. And then there's galleries above where visitors and newspapermen and special guests can come and find out what's going on with a bill, with a law, in the midst of the Senate. The president's room, and the president has a room there, as the president of the United States would have a room. So basically there's a mahogany desk there that actually, when President Abraham Lincoln visited the Capitol, he would sit in that room. So it's a very famous room. So, the Old Hall of Representatives. I wish I could, actually, we'll just go over this here, but you go back to that picture. Let me go back to that picture and see if I can. So, as you see the rotunda, you can see here's the House. This side's the Senate, the blue side, and this side is the House of Representatives here. So, as you see here, the old House of Representatives, was in the National Statuary Hall and south of the Great Rotunda, and there's 40 statues in this rotunda, this area of the rotunda. There's 92 statues in the Capitol building, 92 statues, and 40 of them are in this hall, where the old Hall of Representatives would be. The House of Representatives on this side meets in this chambers in the south wing. And there's numerous works of art, 46 portraits of famous lawgivers in the House Representative side. And it's much larger than the Senate, because it has to be, right? And has a simpler decor. And the House members are never assigned seats. The senators are assigned their seats, but not in the House of Representatives. So the majority party is right of the speaker on the rostrum. And they're the majority, and the minority parties on the left. So you have the two parties, how they would seat in that section there. So the seats would be in that semicircle, as you see there. And above the Speaker of the House is the words, "In God we trust." I find that very important. So this area here is actually 3 times bigger than even the British Parliament. It's the largest national parliamentary room in the world, this area in the Capitol building. The Congress meets for joint sessions in there and is addressed by the president or joint president of, or the joint meeting addressed sometimes at that time. Even the president of the United States would come in. So, and this all is comes through in the House chambers, you can see for each one. So anyway, it's good to look through all these and to travel through here. And of course, visiting the Capitol is an important thing to do in our life. And hopefully you'll be able to visit the Capitol sometime to see the paintings and the sculpture and the architecture and how even when they're doing its daily business. It's basically stirring the hearts of the people to determine them to govern themselves and what freedom really means. And visitors can come and watch the debates going on, and we can go in and seek our representatives, our senators, and lobbyists. Sometimes we can be lobbyists on certain bills that are going through. Students, young students are welcome all the time for tours. They do give tours and guides. Maybe someday you'll be able to go on tour with us. So let's go on. Here's a little thing on visiting the Capitol. We went over that already. The Speaker of the House. Okay, so this last article is on the Speaker of the House. Wow, I didn't realize until after I read this whole article how much power the Speaker of the House of Representatives have. Way more than the Vice President has of the President of the Senate. So the Speaker of the House is the second most powerful office holder in the United States government. The only person that has more power in the United States of America is the president, right? Of our president. So you always think maybe it's the vice president. Well, if something happened to the president, such saying, but the next most powerful position would be the Speaker of the House. Selecting the Speaker, it talks about here. Basically, very early, it was the Speaker was elected by ballot, and then in 1839 they decided to have roll call votes and a voice vote. And in doing this, this would be the first order of business, and they would, especially through the majority party, which the Speaker House, and in 1789 to 1896, basically the average Speaker of the House only had 7 years experience, but now the Speaker of the House usually has more experience, has 20 plus experience. So they usually decide on the Speaker on the eve of the new Congress. And so even the minority party and the majority party put together their leaders, and as the majority party puts together the leaders, they end up voting on or picking their Speaker of the House. So let's talk about the duties and powers. Right here it talks about the powers of the. So the rules, basically there's a lot of duties of the Speaker. The rules of the House. So they basically make sure all of the House rules are put in the House of Representatives are prescribed to the Speaker of the House. So let's go on here, more things. I'll go on to what the Speaker of the House has to do here. The effectiveness of the rules of the House. Remember that the Speaker will hold up that mace, that figure there for order, like order in the House. Also, to be effective, the Speaker of the House needs to have personal dynamism. Basically dynamic person, and also should the Speaker of the House should be of the majority of the House, and have a relationship with the executive branch too. Speaker of the House should be able to get things done. In the past, speakers have been freshmen, I mean, very young, to 70-year-olds, moderator, dictators, Southerners, Northerners, even one president, I think it was President Polk, 2 vice presidents have been Speaker of the House. So a variety of Speaker Houses through the ages. Let's go over the duties more here. We're going to go through the duties. The duties of the Speaker of the House: presides at the meetings or sessions of the House, announces the order of business, puts questions to vote, reports the vote to others, decides the points of order, appoints the chairman of committees of the whole and members of the whole committee and the select conference committees, chooses the speakers pro tempore, refers certain bills through, reports to committees, and puts forth bills on the calendar, enjoys privileges of ordering House members, can vote. Actually, the Speaker of the House can vote and participate in debates too, and can also cast a vote on all questions. Unlike in the Senate, the head of the Senate cannot vote, only in a tie. So, but the Speaker can vote, and it can participate. He can participate in debates, and leave his chair position and go into the debates too. So that's a lot of power. So, right here it talks about triple personality. The triple personality is basically the Speaker of the House is a member of the House. He's the presiding officer of the House of Representatives, and also the leader of the majority party in the chamber. So 3 different important things: member of the House, presiding officer, leader of majority in the chamber. As the presiding officer, the Speaker of the House can interpret the rules of the House committee, and which basically the power given there. Power now, in the past, the Speaker of the House even had more power, as you can say, and now the power is limited by the House and Rules, and they fix the time class of the bills and such. But anyway, the power is limited now. So in the past, the Speaker of the House even had more power. The Speaker of the House had power choosing members to make motions, to suspend rules, and to suspend the 2/3 votes on the first and third Mondays and such. So you can just see, going through this whole thing, the Speaker of the House has in the past had a lot of power, and even today is like the second most powerful person in our government. For the most powerful would be, of course, our President of the United States. So just know how important the Speaker of the House is. I think there's a question on that too. So let's go over the section review here quickly. Shouldn't take too much. We went over all this. Which is the lower house of Congress, and which is the upper house of Congress? I hope you know that. The upper house is going to be the Senate. So the Senate has 100 senators, 2 from each state. The lower house is the House of Representatives, which is all those districts, 435, districts. On to number 2. What do the House districts represent? The House districts represent the population. They go by the population of each area, and that can be apportioned or reapportioned, in the point of the different census is taken. So let's see. Who draws the House district? Okay. The state legislators. Each state draws their own district. Remember, we had the gerrymandering. The governor of that state drew the district. So each district is drawn by their state, right? So number 3, what is apportionment? Okay, we did already. Apportionment is the proportional distribution of the people, basically in that state, is the proportional distribution of congressional seats among the states. So, and Why is a census necessary? So, and counting the people in that area so they can reapportion portion how many Congress people, they should Congress districts they can have from that state. Number 4, who elected members of the Senate before the 17th Amendment? So before the 17th Amendment, the senators were elected by the state government. And they weren't elected by voting, so they would be appointed by the state. But after the 17th Amendment, the senators then were elected by the people, and we vote for our senators now because of the 17th Amendment. So who elects senators today? We do. So number 5, how long is a term in the House, in the Senate? So a term in the House, the House of Representatives, the congressmen there only have terms that last 2 years. And then the terms in the Senate last 6 years, 3 times. The senators go in, when you vote a senator, he's going to be in there for 6 years. So, what are 3 qualifications for serving in the House of Congress? So in the House of Representatives, you have to be at least 25 years old, you have to be a citizen for 7 years, and you have to be a resident of the state where you're chosen. In the Senate, you have to be 30 years old, and you have to be a citizen for 9 years, and you have to be a resident of the state that you're chosen. Those are the qualifications. Number 7, who are the 3 main leaders in Congress? The main leader we know is going to be the Speaker of the House. The leaders in Senate are the other 2, is the President of the Senate, which would be the Vice President of the United States, and the President pro tempore. So the President pro tempore would be that person that would take over when the Vice President was gone. So, number 8, what is the best predictor of how a member of Congress will vote on a particular issue? The best predictor is what party that person is from. So if that person is of the Democratic Party, they're going to vote on the pro-democratic issues, aren't they? If they're of the Republican Party, they're going to vote on the pro. So the best predictor is basically what party that congressperson or senator is from. Number 9, name some of the duties of the Speaker of House. I'm not going to go over those duties. We had so many I just went over. So look in the last page and you can find out all those duties. But there are so many duties of the Speaker of the House. Appointing committees, bringing order in the place, and on and on, voting, and also going to the floor and debating. The Speaker of the House does so many things. So that's the end. Right there, we're done with this section on section 1. So, and I think it'd be really, really great if you could visit the Capitol with me. So.